All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Healy-White, and I'm a Master of Gender Studies candidate here at Memorial University. So today I'm going to be speaking on connections and community on Twitter, personal experience narratives in online feminist social justice movements. Social media is increasingly employed in social justice movements. Within this new terrain, Twitter has become a platform that enables international dialogue through the use of hashtags. This paper examines interconnections between personal experience narratives and forms of online activism through the medium of the internet broadly and Twitter more specifically. In exploring the creation and circulation of important feminist hashtags that garnered extensive global attention in 2014, I ask, how are Twitter users sharing personal stories to raise consciousness of social injustice? How do the stories link together to form a communal narrative that has transformative impact? Scholarship about Twitter as a social justice tool is still in its infancy, and the folklore of Twitter is still relatively unexplored terrain. As Ewick and Silby note, quote, scholars contend that narratives have significant subversive or transformative potential. Considering Twitter trends to be emblematic of larger social conversations online, conversations that may subvert sexist or oppressive discourse, the focus of my investigation is on hashtag #YesAllWomen, which trended in May 2014. As Jessica Valenti explains, quote, "Yes, all women try to illustrate the ubiquity of sexism in women's lives. Drawing on the narratives attached to this hashtag, I explore the ramifications of personal experience narratives as told through Twitter. I show how the seemingly impersonal space of the internet actually enables a level of personal sharing and interconnectivity that is instrumental in social justice movements." Twitter is a microblogging social media platform. Similar to blogging, microblogging is a method of web-based writing and sharing, except in a more compact format. An individual tweet or message is limited to 140 characters. People tweet for all kinds of reasons, to share articles, to post photos, to retweet tweets by people they follow, and as well to share their thoughts, observations, and ideas. Since there are 288 million monthly active users worldwide, and so millions of different conversations all happening at once, a hashtag is a device to allow the tracking of these ideas. For instance, if you go to a conference such as this one and you want to see what other conference attendees are tweeting or talking about or presenting about, and there is a hashtag associated with that conference, you can type in the hashtag in use, for example, Conference 2015, and immediately sift through all the tweets that have been sent purposefully linked to that tag. In other words, it's absolutely a networker's dream. Twitter is first and foremost a social network. Such online platforms allow people to connect on similar interests and topics, transcending physical distance. It makes sense then that Twitter, simultaneously far-reaching and immediate, would be employed in activism. On the role of technology and social media in activism and political movements, Clay Shirky notes, quote, "As the communication landscape gets denser, more complex, and more participatory, the networked population is gaining greater access to information, more opportunities to engage in public speech, and an enhanced ability to undertake collective action." This concept underscores the move from the early days of the internet, which is often linked with more of a passive consumption of material, to a more participatory model that's now referred to since the early 2000s as Web 2.0. In this transformation of the World Wide Web from a receptacle of information and one-way communication to a more dynamic culture of user-generated content, it's clear that the internet landscape has become more conducive for social justice activities as a low-cost, high-impact arena. Sargent and Tagg note that authenticity is crucial to online interactions, or as they explain, quote, "the extent to which an online persona is seen by interlocutors to relate to the person behind it." There's something about the act of sharing personal experience narratives online, especially painful or difficult ones, which creates the impression of an authentic person. Authenticity, cultivated through the act of disclosure, adds weight and impact to the cause. Hashtags that are being widely used may start to trend. It's important to note here, however, that the word trend in other contexts may refer to something that's fashionable or faddish, but on the internet it refers to observable and quantifiable patterns of behavior and communication. When a person, news item, or movement is trending, they're being talked about in great volume. While Yes All Women, the hashtag at the center of this presentation, continues to be employed today, it trended on a global scale in late May 2014. Quickly, I'll go over the history of Yes All Women. These are some headlines associated with the event that prompted the creation of this hashtag. On May 23, 2014, 22-year-old Elliot Rodger went on a killing spree in Isla Vista, California. He killed 6 people and wounded an additional 13 before killing himself. In a disturbing manifesto-style email and a retribution video uploaded to YouTube prior to the mass murder, Rodger proclaimed that he hated and wanted to punish women as a group for his feelings of having been sexually rejected. He also wanted to punish men, whom he perceived as having more sexually fulfilling relationships than he did. While there was a rush to explain the tragic events as the result of extreme, untreated mental illness, many activists pointed to culturally entrenched and normalized misogyny and toxic masculinity as intrinsic underlying factors that contributed to his actions. As such, the tragedy and its glaring focus on deeply ingrained sexism, misogyny, and male entitlement prompted feminist writers and activists, as well as women everywhere, to react with outrage. As Anne Thoreau writes, quote, "We don't know if Elliot Rodger was mentally ill. We don't know if he was a madman. We do know he was desperately lonely and unhappy, and that the men's rights movement convinced him that his loneliness and unhappiness was intentionally caused by women. Because this is what the men's rights movement does. It spreads misogyny, it spreads violence, and most of all, it spreads a sense of entitlement towards women's bodies." The rush for people to distance themselves from their role in patriarchy and toxic masculinity by insisting not all men are sexist, misogynist, etc., was a frustration to many feminists, and a new hashtag was born in the aftermath of the murder: Yes, All Women. As Emma Cueto explains of the hashtag, quote, "Because it honestly doesn't matter if all men are misogynistic, and everyone I've ever encountered is aware that they aren't. What matters is that all women are oppressed by misogyny, and insisting that every discussion of misogyny come with a disclaimer of not all men is a derailing tactic." Women's experiences with sexism, misogyny, violence, and male entitlement are often very personal and sometimes very painful. Yes, All Women became a platform through which to not only speak out to denounce gender inequity and the persecution felt by many women, but to do so on a personal narrative level. It's my contention that the vast, seemingly impersonal space of the internet actually became a surprisingly welcoming place for the sharing of personal stories, due to the capacity for potentially immediate reaction, interaction, and connectivity. While any given individual may only have a few in-person confidants they can talk to about this kind of stuff, through the internet, they may receive a greater degree of feedback, connection. This is particularly true when hashtags are being used, as a hashtag is, in essence, a call for connection. During the height of the Yes All Women trend on Twitter near the end of May 2014, a wide range of narratives were shared that together, I believe, illustrate the collective impact of such an outpouring of personal narratives. At Emily Hughes wrote, quote, "Because every single woman I know has a story about a man feeling entitled to access her body. Every single one." At S. Kemley wrote, "Because when my husband asks me to slow down when we walk together, I realize he hasn't spent his life avoiding street harassment." At Laura Likes Wine wrote, "Because I now wear shorts under dresses in crowded bars after being groped and even penetrated by unseen hands. Yes, all women." And at Bottrell stated, "Yes, all women, because when a girl is harassed or even groped by a stranger in public, we're told to take it as a compliment." Yes, All Women united women of many different backgrounds through communally shared experiences. Some men participated while carefully acknowledging that they could try to empathize, support, and act as an ally, but their privilege made it unlikely that they could ever truly understand the experiences of those gendered female. But as at Clementine Ford tweeted, "Not all men understand it's not all about them." In each Yes All Women tweet, an experience of being gendered female in the world is expressed in both terms of communal experiences that affect many women, and is something that may not often be talked about due to internalized and invisible sexism and misogyny. The tweets show that women have felt compelled to adapt to the endemic and seemingly inevitable threat of harassment and abuse from men due to the reality of living in a society in which men's actions are often tolerated and unchallenged. The mention of wearing shorts under dresses to protect oneself against groping points to the way in which women have felt they have no choice but to adapt, since a large-scale cessation of violence and entitlement feels so unlikely. The tweets also demonstrate how women have often internalized violence avoidance as their responsibility, while, as many activists agree, the emphasis needs to shift to teaching men not to attack and harass. If the dominant discourse surrounding the impetus to tweet a personal experience with the hashtag #YesAllWomen was that gender-based violence is normal, then speaking out against it, in women's own words, can be read as a counter-hegemonic discourse. While men rushed to insist not all men, women recentered the narrative back on their own embodied gendered experiences to declare that, yes, all women may face harassment, are at risk of rape and violence, are the victims of systemic discrimination. The construction of the language of the hashtag itself is thus powerful and meaningful. In a world where male supremacy so often co-opts the conversation to center men's experiences, even when it is specifically women's experiences that are being discussed, communally shouting out women's shared experiences as the victims of prejudice became an act of visibility, subversion, and counter-discourse. Of course, simply participating in a conversation that challenges hegemony and puts marginalized voices at the center is likely not enough to change the daily lived experiences of sexism for any given woman. As Amy Schumann writes of subversive storytelling, quote, "But telling their own stories does not necessarily mean that those women escape the categories and labels imposed on them by dominant narratives." Schumann makes clear that personal narrative is not in and of itself always or necessarily challenging hegemony or dominant discursive paradigms. The potentially subversive qualities of the hashtag #YesAllWomen movement are not just what they were saying, but the sheer act of saying it at all. As @AmberCadabra astutely observed, quote, "Because I shouldn't have to wonder how posting my experience to #YesAllWomen will affect my job, and it will." Here our attention is turned to how it is permissible for women to experience sexism and misogyny, not only permissible, but I would argue socially legislated through the systems that have allowed such things to survive and flourish, but not acceptable for them to speak out about it. Many women using the hashtag may have been calling out an act of sexism, aggression, double standard, or male privilege for the first time, and in a very public way. Attention of all ideological movements, of course feminism included, has always been how to account for difference and diversity of experience while lobbying for change. Women is a social category, and a woman may have a vastly different experience of being a woman than another. So while feminisms are diverse and multifaceted and intersecting with many other social categories, such as race, class, gender identity, sexuality, and ability, to name a few, #YesAllWomen organically emerged to suggest that among such difference and diversity, there are many experiences in terms of subjugation by patriarchy that women share. In the larger paper of this topic, I examine other significant hashtags that trended in the last few months of 2014, providing further examples of the role of personal experience narratives on the internet to raise awareness of gender issues. These represent a cross-section of different feminist social justice issues with an emphasis on intersectionality. They represent different subject positions in which there is risk, daily risk of violence or death, or the risks associated with speaking out publicly on a topic, or both.